This is the Coin It Podcast, sponsored by CoinCosmo.com. Have fun like a collector. Think like an investor. Whether you're just a hobbyist or looking for an alternative investment with rare coins, paper money, NFTs, or art, your host, Charles Jonath, is covering it all. Now your host, Charles Jonath.
So we have Brian here with Pillars and Portraits, Spanish colonial collector, and general Latin American coins. I think you really like anything like early 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century Latin American coinage. You've built an amazing collection. It seems like now they have these sets available to have registry sets and everything on PCGS, right?
Yeah, and I actually worked with PCGS to build most of them probably about 5 years ago when BJ Searles was still around. So we built out the pillar set that's in the U.S. Colonials, and we did a lot of the different ones, including the World Coins in early America set that became a little popular. So yeah, it's become more of a collected area, and I'm doing everything from the 1732 beginning when the Spanish began in the colonies with the milled coinage up until kind of the early 19th century and primarily in the crown size. So,
wow, that's awesome, man. That's really cool, and I'm glad that PCGS did that because there are collectors, in that area of numismatics, and they're building, I feel. And not only that, there's some shared history there. I know some of those Latin American countries actually contracted designers in the Philadelphia Mint that minted some of those coins, like the early Cuban stuff and other nations in Latin America. So,
no, exactly. And I think as you hit on the registries earlier, I mean, it's so hard in some cases to break in and find an organizing principle. And, for the World Coin in early America set, which is partly how I went from being a U.S. collector into being a Spanish colonial and a Latin collector, has been recognizing the overlap between the U.S. history and the economics of the pre-1857 period and into, the fact that many of those coins that would have circulated were in fact, from Mexico and from Peru and Bolivia and so on. And yet there's limited information. It's very difficult to find that organizing principle. And the set registry has been fantastic to provide that overview in many cases to allow the casual person to dip in and start to understand that space.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially if they have they identify the specific series and they do write-ups like they did for the other coins, like just basic write-ups to give you a bit of the history and the issue. I mean, all that stuff's really important. Like if you want to get serious and build a great collection, essentially.
Absolutely.
So that's great, man. I mean, why Spanish colonials? How did you really get into that, and how did you make that crossover?
How did I get into it? I was previously collecting, rare U.S. gold, primarily Nomato half eagles, the Lanaga Charlotte. It was a lot into the undervalued dates. Because when I started collecting, I didn't have, $10,000 to spend on a coin. I might have $2,000-3,000. So I was always focused on undervalued issues. And over time, as my discretionary income increased, the size of the coin, the quality of the coin increased. But in U.S., I got to a point where my tastes outran my budget, and that was part of it. And the other part of it for me had been in the U.S. space. So much of the supply is managed by so few dealers, and some of that. In that retail U.S. gold. And I found that it was less about the hunt of collecting. It was more about, was I first in line to be able to get the piece that was brought to market? And that frustrated me. It wasn't interesting anymore.
Interesting.
I remember a moment where I was offered a coin, and it was for a ridiculous amount of money. And I think more than the issue was worth. And I reflected, it was an 1838D 5 and AU53, beautiful coin. It was $25,000, and it was very poor value to me. And this was 2015 maybe, and I was starting to dabble in the Latin American space, primarily because I appreciated the crossover of those world coins into early U.S. history, and I always found the designs to be fascinating. The Central American Republic, mountains and sun motifs. I thought they were just beautiful. And it was at that moment I just decided, I'm done with the U.S. because I can't build a meaningful enough collection. And then I sold a lot of it, and I began to dabble into that the Latin American space to start. And it wasn't really until maybe 2019 or so that I went full in and started to build out very meaningful pieces that I have today.
That's interesting. That's really smart, actually. I mean, I think it's cool that you're value oriented and in collecting too, because you're thinking a little bit alike as far as maximizing your value, and then it does wind up to be kind of an investment also as well. And as that space is growing and more collectors come into Spanish colonials, and those those key dates and stuff like that are going to start going for higher premiums, I think you'll see down the line. So I think it's very smart. And then they're such attractive coins. They do have beautiful designs, and a lot of those coins tone really nicely and everything. And there's a whole slew of space. Like, have you gotten into any of the shipwreck stuff or anything like that, or is that a whole other thing for you?
Yeah, I've never been interested in the shipwreck pieces, largely because they all have issues. I've always gravitated towards buy the absolute best that exists if you can afford it. And,
Right.
and it just never found a match for me. There's some really cool history and it works for a lot of people, but I never found value in those premiums. And I've always gravitated towards just the absolute finest that exists of whatever those key issues were.
Got it. So would you ever go for something like an early Spanish colonial cob type thing that's not shipwrecked, that still that's a straight grade, let's say, or?
Yeah, perhaps. And I think if it had a really interesting match of the history and the piece, I mean, so fantastic quality. I mean, the Potosi hearts are awesome. Some of those things that have multiple layers of demand where you can imagine many different types of collectors getting into them rather than just a cob specialist. And that's,
Right.
I think when you're looking at how to your earlier point of looking at these, coins as an investment as well. And you figure coins, I mean, they don't generate cash, right? It's the greater
Right.
fool theory. You got to find someone that's going to be willing to pay even more than you did because it's not generating any cash flow. And so you got to find the areas that are, set to have those multiple levels of demand and,
Right.
will have
Right.
appreciation. And you think about the way you value coins is often what was the last one that sold, or what is something that is comparable that is selling for. So
Right.
you've got to really find those areas that have potential appreciation based on people finding them to be more interesting. And then again, back to the Spanish colonial and the Latin space, U.S. collectors are going to be interested in that because it's from the area and they circulated here. Spanish collector will because they were colonial. Mexican collector will be. There's multiple levels to be able to support the demand base.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you're going to get a support too from the people that start to get into collecting from those individual home countries too.
Exactly. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, no, definitely. I'm with you all the way on that. Like, what is your favorite issue right now? Is there something you're focused on, or specifically like a specific country, specific mint?
I'm just trying to build out the most fantastic Latin Spanish crown collection I can.
Got it. Okay.
And so it's really by type. And so I added in just a beautiful and probably one of the best, if not the best, Chilean volcano peso last. That was something I've been looking for. And so on top of just the type of those iconic crowns, I've been doing Guatemalan pillars, which I think are extremely undervalued. And I had the opportunity to buy a large collection of them, and probably the finest that exist for the issue, if not the condition census. And so that's another area that I've been working on is those Guatemalan pillars. But it's primarily, again, for me, just the iconic crowns and the best grade with fantastic eye appeal, and eye appeal trumping grade in every instance.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like with the Guatemalan stuff, I feel like those are harder to find.
Super hard.
It's difficult. So how do you go about that exactly? Like when you're looking for a specific issue like that, are you working with like certain dealers to help you find stuff, or do you attend trade shows? Like what's your procurement method?
Yeah, it's been through relationships, and primarily it's been through one or two key dealers that are based here that travel through Spain. I give you the name. I'm not sure if he wants his name out there in that sense, but
It's up to you.
He's been my primary dealer, And his business model is taking people like me. He travels through Europe and finds things. And I had the opportunity to buy his collection, which was a big start for me on that space, as well as in many of the other major issues that you've probably seen me post. So relationships are what it's about, and maintaining those good relationships, both in terms of ready cash when something comes up, you got to be willing to pay for it. And at the same time, trust, where if he's calling me from Spain and saying, I've got something for you, I got to trust him. And being, that person that I know, he knows he can come to me and I'll be there to pick up the best material. And we have that great back and forth relationship that way.
No, definitely. And that's the thing. I feel like Instagram is really good for that. It's almost like a way to showcase all your coins, because now if people know what you collect, if they find something, they could come to you. It's almost like what the Tyrants collection did. Obviously it's a much cheaper way of doing it, but to show your elaborate like coin collection in a venue like the Long Beach show or whatever, it brought a lot of people to see those coins and say, okay, these are the coins he's buying. If I get something like him, if I get something like that, then I approach that collector essentially. Absolutely. But Instagram's just a real, like basically a free way to do that. So
it is, and it's a younger demographic. I mean, if I look at the insights from it, I mean, the demographic is mostly under 40, if not under 30. And while that, doesn't necessarily hit with me and perhaps where a lot of other folks are, to your point, I've bought probably 2 or 3 coins from my collection off of Instagram, which is, I never expected to do that jumping into it.
Right.
I've sold a $25,000 coin on Instagram, and that was a shock to me. So it's great, and I think shows me how many young collectors are out there, and certain of them are probably not going to stick with it, but you see the traction that a few of them have and the intellect to match with the interest and the curiosity. So it's made me a lot more positive around the future of the hobby, seeing some of the folks that are on that platform.
100%. And like a community oriented basis too. So like a lot of people that are interested in the same type of coins sort of gravitate together and build a community on these social media platforms. That's what I've been noticing. So it's really interesting stuff. Yeah, it's crazy, man. The future of coins.
It is. I mean, you can imagine where, trade shows don't occur anymore. Everything goes to online auction, goes to social platforms. Wow. I can imagine that there's going to be a pretty fast day where Central States probably doesn't exist. Do you
think so? Yeah.
2 Baltimores, 2 Long Beaches, the summer fun. It's kind of a thing of the past, and it's strange. You learn so much by seeing something in hand and knowing what you appreciate.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like whenever you get a coin, and so like I'll buy stuff out of auction, whether it's for me or for a client or whatever. There's always something to be said to when you have the coin in your hand. The photography is not always exactly representative of the actual individual piece, So I try to go to these. If I'm bidding in an auction, I'm going there and I'm doing lot viewing because, I want to see that coin in hand. And then also too, like I just came back from the fun show. I see a lot of people came up to my booth and stuff that know me from Instagram that have never actually met me before. Now they got a chance to meet me in person. So I think there's merit to those things. To what degree they're going to have the same significance as they once have? Yeah, probably. Like the internet is sort of taking over, but definitely there's merit to it, and they're kind of cool. They're fun too.
They're fun. They're a social event, and I encourage anyone who really is serious. You've got to see things in hand, a lot of things, to be able to actually train your eye. And, I had some great opportunities to buy out of collections over the past. Mentors that eventually sold their collection to me. And it wasn't until I saw those things that I actually knew what good looked like.
Right.
And you completely recalibrate what you think quality is. Based on either going and seeing fantastic collections at auction, having unique opportunities to buy things from, mentors, people that have been around a while. You've got to constantly go through that. Otherwise, your tastes are going to not keep pace with the true quality that can be out there.
Yeah, that's so true. And then, I think it's just your brain, it's like an algorithm. The more it sees it, the more visual input of a specific series, the better you become at knowing what is quality, knowing, understanding the grade, what's undergraded, what's, overgraded, let's say, so, I mean, it's just, that visual is huge.
And I think to the point of, there's many people, I mean, is it more important to be able to grade, or is it more important to be able to understand what great eye appeal is? What original surfaces or reasonably original surfaces are? And I'd actually advocate for the latter. I can probably tell the difference between a 64 plus and a 65, or a 65 plus and a 66. I can be wrong as much as I'm right, but I can pretty well tell this is fantastic quality for whatever grade it is.
100%. Yeah.
I think that's actually more important, and where I would encourage people to spend more of their energy rather than technically learning the difference between an AU 53 and a 55.
I agree. No, yeah, that's for sure. Because it's just like in anything, and the proof is in the pudding. You'll see that in the auction records. How many 63s or 58s? It's whatever, arbitrary, but go for all over the board. And there's a reason for that, because it's the quality of the individual piece and the eye appeal of it, how that looks, how that coin looks. That's really where the value is, I think, in any series.
Yeah, it separates the real quality from the commodities, and it's amazing when you see a coin that shows up at market that reflects everything. It's got the grade, it's got the quality, it comes from an older collection. You can't price those type of things linearly, and that's where I think people really need to spend more time educating themselves and seeing those type of things, so that when 5 years down the line something pops up, that's the right reference point for pricing a special piece, rather than the commodities that show up all the time and reflect really a linear progression on price and value. I
agree 100%. And then, you know what, you got a big opportunity there too, because, the specific series you're focused on is it, I feel like it's a genuine collectible series. It's not like type gold. You know what I mean? Like type gold is really, I don't know. That's why we don't kind of really deal in it so much. And I'm certainly not an expert in type gold, but I know it's very popular and a lot of people do collect it, but I think it is very grade oriented. And I feel like the quality is very new. They've gotten into very nuanced, like quality within grade. And it's just, it's commoditized a little bit, but on issues like Spanish colonial coins, it's really it's an art piece essentially. So
that's it. If people can see it for art, then the value of it is very different than the grade on the holder. And I think some of these pieces probably do transcend the hobby into being somewhat of an art.
No, definitely. Yeah. A numismatic art. So as far as like in that Spanish colonial and Latin American coin market, what is the dynamic of it now? Is it sort of increasing a little bit like the general U.S. market has been and the overall world market, or is it still kind of like the same?
It's been exceptionally strong, like with everything. Okay. I think coming out of the pandemic, with the money supply being so increased, it's risen all boats. I'd say that there are series like cap and raise, Mexican cap and raise, 8 real, which are just becoming irrationally priced in some cases. There's a coin right now at auction. It's going to go over, it's in 66 plus, will go for over $10,000, probably a $3,000 coin a year and a half ago. Common date 63s with, a little bit of eye appeal, doubled. It's just not sustainable long term. Mm-hmm. And, I think that part of the market's a little hot, but the best of the best is reaching very clear heights. You only see it when a collection comes to market, like, Cape Coral was the last one that sold, was the ANA in 2021. You wind up seeing the Pat Johnston sale that came out. Stax had it at NYINC, the next round of it coming up. So those sets are going to continue to show how strong the best of the best actually are. But we'll see how the other moderate pieces actually fare over time. My instinct would be that, a lot of the available pieces that have just achieved these premiums are going to fall like the rest of the the hobby in different areas. They just don't warrant where they've gone. Yeah,
that's what tends to happen. The quality stays at the top, and then the more intermediary to come and just go to the way. That's what really takes a hit in the marketplace. But those top quality pieces, I feel like once they're gone, that's it. Like they're going to be in someone else's collection for God knows how long.
20, 30 years. I got a box of them right here. They're never going anywhere until, why would I ever sell them? They can never replace them.
exactly. Why would you? No, it makes sense. So, I mean, in addition to all this, collecting coins, you also collect like numismatic books, like literature,
Yeah.
right? And you have an extensive collection on these issues as far as books
Yeah.
and stuff like that. A
Yeah.
lot of them
I
which
do
are in
have a,
Spanish. Do you speak Spanish actually, or
actually, enough to read the books.
enough to read the books?
And
Okay.
the books have been a lot of about building out provenance history. I started with acquiring a unique Mexican forest scudo, which was pedigree provenance through Norweb, and prior to that, Jose Toribio Medina, who is a very well-known author and Chilean researcher. And he wrote many of the original books on whether it's Chilean coinage, the colonial coins of Hispanic America, the very first kind of siege coinage book that was ever written about Latin American issues. And so I've bought a lot of those books, partly because of the history, being just a parallel to the coins. The books are rarer than the coins, and there's a lot of opportunity to add value to the collection based on finding those provenances. So I've got, probably 100 books. Some of them are, unique. Maybe a few of them are that rare. Many of them have less than 20 known.
Wow.
I got the original Fon Robert bid book from the Central American sale, which is fantastic. And it's allowed me to take my collection, find those dating back to the 1800s in some cases, get the provenance on the coin, and really be able to tie that history through, which I think overall adds value whenever the time is to bring it to market, to be able to take a piece that was previously anonymous and then tie it back through 100 years of history into a famous collection.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think it's harder to do for foreign coins, for world coinage, because it's all
is,
over the place,
The funny thing is, the best has always been recognized for what it was. And so, you go back into the Norweb sales, you go back further past that, Freeman Craig had some fantastic sales that were documented, and on and on. I mean, they're always plated. You go back into the Henry Christensen sales, you can find them. And so there's, just like you have heritage today, you had Schulman and Christensen, 50 years ago.
Right.
The Chapman sales, you look at John Story Jenks in the early 1900s, massive plated World Series. Eamon Carter in the 80s, the Garrett family. I mean, there's huge amount of documentation, but there's a lot of opportunity to be able to just go and take your collection. If it's truly a special piece, you probably are going to find it somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. And then so how have you had any experience about attaching pedigree to the specific holder, working with PCGS and NGC?
Tons of them.
Okay.
There's, and I try to do that for everyone that I can, so I probably have about 40%, 30% of my set, which is then provenanced as well. So
Awesome.
Some of them came out of Spanish auctions where it's like, well, that's it. Others, right. And I know where that was. Others were anonymous and have been able to tie it back. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, probably my most recent opportunity was out of the Heritage Cape Coral sale. There was a Colombian 8 real that I thought was fantastic. And I just went to the usual sources. Turns out it's ex-Norweb, ex-Virgil Brand, and now it's on the holder. And that adds value. I mean, it's not like it's a random sale from a random company. I mean, it's brand Norweb, which is pretty darn good.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, and it shows you it's been choice. It's recognized as choice by collector after collector, not just yourself. So yeah,
absolutely,
definitely. I mean, who do you think is is there like a big player in that specific area right now? Who's the main sort of player in that space now?
There's so many players, and I think there's some dealers that are really the market makers, and also the biggest collectors. You've got Mike Dunnigan, who's probably the foremost Mexican coin dealer. You've got the folks at World Numismatics, Corey Frampton, Max Keach, who are, Max is a huge collector. Mm-hmm. The folks at Sedgwick, are real players and market makers. Andy Lustig is a fantastic dealer who covers Europe. And there's a lot of people, and you've got all the folks that are in Europe. The Ario and Calico and Cayon and Tallerifo. I mean, there's a lot of houses that specialize in this space, and they bring those coins to market through great relationships. And they're all good people, and I've been able to build relationships with a few of them that have, helped me to fill out my set. Most notably Andy Lustig, who's been a primary mentor for me in this space.
That's awesome, man. So it's very smart that you did that too. You work with dealers who are very knowledgeable in the space that can help you navigate everything. I think that's,
win-win.
Critical. That's very interesting. Do you think, so have you ever attended, I know there's an organization, right, that's like a collectors club, and then they do a show, I believe in Arizona, right? That does Spanish. It's like an only Mexican coin show or a Spanish colonial coin show.
Exactly. It's US Mex. It's they do their show. It's October 27th through 29th in Scottsdale. I'm planning on going this year. I haven't been in the past. With the family, it's tough to get out of here sometimes. The World Numismatic folks put a lot of that on, and it's a great show to go to, I hear, if you can make your way out there.
That's awesome. Very cool. So how did you get started in collecting coins in general?
Geez, how did I get started? My grandpa had a book of coins. I remember going through those when I was young. I've collected things for my entire life, whether it was baseball cards or comic books or autographs. I paid my way through college selling game-used baseball bats.
Nice.
And so coins, I think I fell into it with a trip to Dahlonega, Georgia, actually, when I was visiting my mom in Atlanta. And I was kind of dabbling around gold and silver because it was the last time the metals spiked, and I was trading, and it just kind of fell into the history, which I've always loved. And then I started collecting, dove right into one of the hardest areas, which is, rare U.S. gold right out of nowhere, and built a pretty meaningful set before selling that through. But that was kind of how I started. And, that was 2006, maybe I started doing it very, casually, and probably sold out of the gold pieces in 2017, 18, and then have been primarily in this space since, 17, 18.
Wow.
So short period of time to, be as deep in, I guess, as I am.
Yeah, very much so. Well, you put a lot of time into it, though. You put a lot of time and effort, like as far as, research alone,
It's a full-time job, but for people that I imagine like yourself, like-minded, I'm always curious about something. So being
me too.
Positively obsessed on things is my personality style. So, when I get positively obsessed on this and try to do a great thing and build a great set, and I think it takes some of that curiosity and obsession to ever be a fantastic collector, or a really fantastic in a lot of things in any space.
I feel like that's what happens. All of a sudden it just becomes an obsession, and then it's like, you can't stop. But if you enjoy it and you really love it, it's easy to do. And you'd be surprised. You look around, like, a year goes by and the amount of coverage you've had is it's incredible.
It is. And you build your knowledge, you build your repertoire, and you really get your brain wired in so that it becomes less and less effort, less and less mistakes, still make them. But you reduce the friction with all that study and research, and hopefully you take energy from it like I do. I'm sure you're a similar way.
Yeah, exactly. It's scary similar, but yeah. So, what do you think, what is your future goals as far as collecting? You want to complete any kind of specific set, or what's the next moves?
I never really espoused typical set collecting. So having something at the beginning, a middle, and an end prevents me from going wherever I want to go. So I probably don't have any specific goal in mind other than to continue to add fantastic pieces that fit with the general theme of, iconic crowns from Latin America. And that generally is going to be, harder and harder to do as prices go up and as supply becomes smaller from just a number of people coming in. And frankly, I probably couldn't buy what I have today, even if it came onto the market, because it'd be too expensive. So I don't know what the goals are but I still enjoy doing this part, and probably can only add a coin or two a year to the meaningful set that I have, just because of availability and price.
Right.
But that seems to be sufficient for now.
That's true. But I like your method, though. I think that's a good way to do it. Just keep doing research, acquiring information, stimulating your mind, learning more and more about what you collect in general. And then buying the best pieces as they come available when you can,
And the hardest piece is knowing what's the best when it shows up, so you don't make a mistake either in buying it or in passing on it. And it's that's where mentorship comes in. I mean, someone to tell you that's the best I've ever seen, and when that person tells you, you go buy that coin. And it doesn't matter if you can't figure out how to price it; you just go buy it. And I've had some of those instances where it's like I can't conceive how that price came up, but I trust you. And then over time, as things become more price transparent, as other things come to market, it might not be the same thing, but a comparable thing, you get price discovery and you realize, oh my gosh, that's actually the best value I've ever bought.
Yeah.
And I look at some of the things here. I in my mind overpaid for them, but in retrospect, they're the best deals I ever had.
Right.
And so it's the combination of the dealer relationship, the trust, and it's the ability to just say, I can't find the reference point, but I trust you, and it kind of makes sense. I'm going to take a leap of faith.
Well, here's the thing. I could tell you from the other side of the bench as an active dealer, all the best coins I bought, I overpaid for, and I still made a profit on them. So. Yeah. And a lot of times I thought I was getting a deal on coins. Didn't wind up to be the case. So yeah, I mean, the top of the top, you're always going to have to pay that premium, but it's worth it,
And I think the key thing for people is that, the top of the top doesn't mean you have to spend 5 figures on a coin.
No, right.
It means that as you look at what you can afford, you can match that with areas that are underappreciated and actually be the best at something without having to have $1 million collection.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I think that's an underappreciated thing. And it sounds elitist to say buy the best, only the best. And it takes, I think, that curiosity and that passion to find the areas that you can actually be the best in your budget. And over time, hopefully people appreciate that, and you wind up seeing, again, that investment potential come through.
That's very smart. Very smart. And I agree with you. And I think if you're going to look at it as a long-term investment, that's the way to approach it. Exactly. Because you got to find the best series based on what you feel your budget is, and then just acquire the knowledge, put in the time, the hard work and the effort. And then you have to have patience, obviously. And then, work with someone you trust. And over time, you're going to have an incredible collection. You'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it as you build it. And then when it comes time to sell, you'll be handsomely rewarded usually. I mean, that's what I've seen, I've had the benefit to see it over the years, growing up in the business. And I just, it's obvious to me, but it's not obvious it's hard to understand if you haven't seen it before time and time again.
And if you haven't gone through a full cycle of building a collection, selling a collection, to see the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Right.
And it's easy to buy. It's a lot harder to sell. And you don't learn really how well you bought until it goes time to actually sell it.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So are you going to, you mentioned you're going to attend the show, and you're going to try and attend that show in Phoenix, right?
If I can convince my wife, I think I'll be definitely at the ANA show.
Cool. Okay.
Chicago one of those days. Don't know which day, but I'll probably pop in for a bit for that. And that'll probably be my show experience for the year. Just those two. Very
cool. Well, come say hi if you're at the NA, if you wind up making it out.
I'll be there.
That's awesome. So how can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram. It's at Pillars and Portraits, and it's Goldie Descudo as an avatar, if that's how easy to find. But Pillars and Portraits.
Yeah, definitely check that out. He's got an incredible collection. Well, Brian, I mean, thank you so much, man. I'm glad we made this happen finally. I know we've been talking back and forth for some time, and I'm glad I have you on. And you did all the right things, man. You came into this, you put in the time and the effort. You really did, and you're super knowledgeable in this area. So,
great to be on. Apologies, it took a couple of times, and thank you for the discussion, and appreciate the opportunity. And if anyone has any questions on things, they can reach out to me on Instagram. Happy to give my thoughts, some education, or help you in building out your collection as well.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Take it easy. Have a good one out there.
You. Bye.